University in the Tennessee Valley, right on the dot today. We are ready to get started with our special edition of Inside Oakwood with Dr. Leslie Pollard. Today we have some special guests with us because we're going to be talking about a very interesting thing that's happening on campus today. It's Law Week and it's going to go through October 13th, I understand. Dr. Pollard is here with us. Good morning, Dr. Pollard.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, Donna. Good morning to all of our listeners too for WJOU. Good morning, good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Pollard. So good to have you here with us today again for another special edition. All right, so you have a word for us today before we get into our hot topic today.
Yes. The word, of course, is engagement. And we're talking about actually civic and social engagement. While we speak much about social justice and its necessity, underneath it is the notion that every citizen should be engaged. And when we think about the spiritual obligations of that, my mind goes to, of course, the passage that we quoted last week, render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's.
Yeah.
We owe Caesar a citizenship duty, and it's a holistic duty. So when I think about citizenship, I think not just about voting, as many of us have done already, but also making sure that public policy reflects the principles of the kingdom. It will never reflect them perfectly, but it will improve the quality of life of the people that we serve and that we minister to. And so one of my favorite quotes whenever I talk about this topic, Donna, comes from Dom Elder Camara, who was a Brazilian theologian and who was an advocate, a strong social justice advocate in Brazil. And he was opposed to the government on many of its policies that left the people disenfranchised and marginalized. And this is what Elder said one day. He said, when I give food to the poor, they call me a saint. When I ask, why are they poor? They call me a communist.
Wow.
When I give food to the poor, they call me a saint.
They say you just can't win for losing, right?
Yeah, but when I ask, but why are they poor? They call me a communist. So I think as we think about public policy and the conversation we'll do today with our professors and our students, what the key question we're asking, what is the role of public policy of service in professions to the improvement and the enhancement of the lives of the people that we are called to serve? And so we're glad for our professors who are here this morning, as well as our students. This is going to be a fertile discussion in light of the big debates. Two have taken place now. This is going to be a great discussion. I hope we can keep it to 30 minutes. I really do.
Yeah, we're going to try. We're going to try our best. But since you mentioned debate, I would like to hear some comments about, I thought it was really good. I didn't get a headache this time. I didn't have a migraine, I should say, because I actually had a migraine after the first one.
Oh my, sorry.
Yeah, so it was much better.
And why don't we ask each guest to introduce themselves, and then we just plunge right into it, okay? So let's start with Professor Foster.
Yes, I'm Preston Foster. I have the privilege of being an assistant professor and the director of the public policy program at the great Oakwood University.
Amen. Professor Berdin?
Hi, hello everyone. Yes, my name is Dr. Marcya Berdin. I am the pre-law program director and assistant professor at Oakwood University. I'm also Oakwood alum, proud Oakwood alum. And so I'm really excited about all the wonderful things that are happening at Oakwood University.
Amen.
All right.
Okay, let's start with Brianna. Brianna?
Hi guys, my name is Brianna Dean. I am the USN parliamentarian.
All right, welcome. And then of course, Ian.
Hey everybody, my name is Ian Chandler, and I am a pre-law political science major here at Oakwood, and I am the USM Senator for the School of Social Science and Education.
Amen.
So, Dr. Pollard, I just want to hear how everybody felt, get some feedback on that debate, first of all. Then we'll get into Law Week, which is really what we're here to talk about, and so we can understand about that. Can we get what's your feedback on that, Professor Foster?
Well, as I said jokingly at the top, I think the fly won the debate. But seriously, I think that Kamala Harris comported herself well. She had a special task, a different task. She's the first African-American female to participate in a debate at that level for Vice President of the United States. Mike Pence is a seasoned debater, a former radio host, and you know how smooth radio hosts can be. But I think on substance, I think she won the debate off the very top by pinning Mr. Pence down on the administration's negligence on COVID. We are all, the reason that we're doing this show the way we're doing it this morning is because of COVID. Right. It is the overriding issue. And I think that she did a great job of positioning the responsibility for why we are in this position on the Trump administration. I think that's what people will remember most.
Right, right. Anybody else? I just want to give you an opportunity to respond if you have any response or comments about it, and then we're going to get to the Law Week. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll say a few words. I first of all, I think that I appreciate the fact that it was an actual debate. I agree with you, Donna. I got literal headache from the first one. So I appreciate that it was an actual debate. And this is the first time I will say that the newspapers like the Times and the New York Times and CNN, they actually predicted this debate pretty well. A lot of things that they said were going to happen. You know, they said that Vice President Mike Pence would kind of redirect questions, which he did. They also said that Kamala Harris would have to really articulate what the Biden plan is, which she did very well, I believe. And so I was very appreciative of this debate. And it also kind of gave us a purview because the big issue is that both presidential candidates are 74 and then Biden will be 78. So technically the VPs are kind of positioning themselves in a way to take over and really fill those seats. So I think that this gave us a purview as to how they would lead if they were to have to become presidents due to the health concerns of the presidential candidates.
All right, now I think that was good. I think a lot of people wanted to hear what you all had to say, so I'm glad I gave you an opportunity. But because of the debate this week, this makes this week even more significant because it's Law Week at Oakwood University, and so this kind of just flows into it, and probably helps with recruitment, maybe, I don't know. But tell us about Law Week. OU Law Week started on Tuesday, I believe, right?
Yes, it did. So we are so excited about our virtual Law Week. This is the first time that this has occurred at Oakwood University, and I will even go further to say in Northwest Alabama. And so we're super elated. We had our kickoff with the illustrious Howard University School of Law. We were very pleased to have Dean McGehee and also his assistant, Anitra Brown. They spoke with our students. All the students that attended got fee waivers to apply to Howard Law, so we were really thrilled about that. And then we also had our very own Professor Foster do an excellent personal statement workshop where he definitely broke down, you know, what are the elements of a personal statement and how to submit that winning statement. And then on yesterday evening, we had Belmont University College of Law, which is in Nashville, Tennessee, which our very own former alum, Professor Moraine, he also is a professor at that law school, and they spoke to us, and then we were very privileged to have 3 students from Belmont, 1 alum and 2 current, and they were able to really dive into how it is to go to school at Belmont and what you can expect and the culture and everything. So we're really thrilled about that. And then afterwards, we had Elizabeth Hardy, who is a current 2L at Howard Law, and Samela Caro, who was our 2020 valedictorian and is now a 1L at Georgetown Law, to speak with the students. They are Oakwood graduates. So they were able to say, hey, these are the classes that work. These are the classes that prepared us. Oakwood did what they could do best to help us matriculate through law school. So it was really great. Tonight, we have William and Mary School of Law. This will be the first time that they are coming to Oakwood, even though it's virtual. And I'm really excited because the dean is Dexter Smith, and he is huge about law, but in particular, he is emphasizing and encouraging Black males to attend law school because those numbers are very low. And then on next week, Monday, October 12th, we will have a panel of attorneys. Now, this is a first. We've never had a panel of attorneys in their 20s and 30s from all aspects of law, from international law to business to corporate to some owning their own practices to working in legal aid. So I'm super excited. We have a few Oakwood alums as well as others that I had the privilege of attending law school and working with. And then on Tuesday, October 13th, our culminating event is the Lsac Forum. And for those who don't know, that stands for the Law School Admissions Council. This is a virtual forum where students will be able to meet with all law schools around the country, talk to the admissions counselors, and really get a purview of the school, but also possibly gain admission. And I'm going to say this really briefly. Last year, we attended this event in person. And our very own recent 2020 graduate, Courtney Garrett, received multiple full scholarships from top 25 law schools in the country. And he is currently at the University of Alabama School of Law, which is number 23 in our country on a full ride. So we are really excited about this week.
Wow, that's a lot to be excited about. Professor Foster, so many things have been happening to improve the program and just build out on it. Tell us about some of the things. I know this is one of them. How long have we been doing a Law Week? How many years have we been doing Law Week?
We've been doing Law Week for quite a few years, but Dr. Berdin has really boosted it to the next level. There are a few things that she didn't say because she's humble, but 3 of the last 5 valedictorians from Oakwood University have been from our department, and all three of them are at Georgetown University Law School, which is a top 10 law school in the country. Our students are exceptional. We've had exceptional success over the last 12 years. By my count, we've had over 65 of our students accepted and or completed law school. Of the students who have applied to law school or policy school from our department, over 93% of them have been accepted within 2 years of graduation. So we tell students, whether they're Adventist or not, if you're thinking about law or public policy, there really is no better place that you can be than Oakwood University. That, along with our focus on Christian service, because as you know, we live in a very tense time in our society, and there's a temptation for our frustration to flow right into our flesh and to return evil for evil. And of course, that's not the way we do it. We assure and train our students to see what God has to say about social justice. And I know Dr. Pollard has a lot more to say about that, but to remind them that God has ordained them to this ministry. And I really do believe that both law and public policy are a ministry because Jesus is an advocate for guilty people.
Wow.
Wow. Well, there's a whole, Professor, and as we bring our students into this conversation, there's a whole way of thinking, a whole reading of the Bible that shows that when Christ came, he said, the Spirit of the Lord, Luke 4:16-17, is upon me. He has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor, the gospel of freedom and liberation to the poor. So the notion that the least and the last and the lost need our special care was already embedded in the ministry of Christ. I'm curious as to, with our students, when you think about Ian, when you think about going into law, and you know, our motto, enter to learn, depart to serve, Professor Foster mentioned law as a ministry. How do you see that working as you anticipate your training in law school and then getting out and serving? How do you envision that working as you think about your futures?
Well, you know, oftentimes when you especially talk to older folks, and I tell them that I want to be an attorney, the first thing they start doing is scratching their head as elderly Seventh-day Adventist people, because they don't see, at least in their day, it's different now, but they didn't see, you know, the possibility of being a lawyer and also being a man of Christ, because they were equating that to a lot of lying and a lot of cheating. I'm so thankful for Professor Foster and Professor Berdin, because they have taught all of us here at Oakwood that we're able to go into politics, we're able to go into law and still be young men and women for Christ who are going to make impactful legislation changes and you know, new laws and new things that are going to help people from a Christian standpoint. And we're going to allow God to matriculate through all factors of law and of government. And so I'm very thankful for the work that they're doing. And I'm confident that as Oakwood students matriculate into law school and into government and into all sorts of different arenas, that we're definitely going to allow God to be in that space.
I agree with everything Ian said. I second all of that. In one of the classes I'm taking now, International Relations with Professor Foster, one of the things he told us on the first day of class when we were learning about U.S. ambassadors and diplomats and what those are and what those mean for the U.S., Professor Foster told us that we are the ambassadors for Christ. You know, we advocate on his behalf. We work on his behalf. And one of the things that resonates me from Dr. Berdin, along with Professor Foster and all the other amazing professors we have in history and political science department, is they constantly remind us that God is going to place us where he wants us, and to follow those footsteps and to follow the markings of Christ. And we know that politics can get messy and law can get messy, but we're chosen and we're covered by the blood of Christ, and God has specific work, I believe, and Dr. Berdin and Professor Foster remind us, just for us. So I believe if we continue to walk on that path God has for us, follow the readings and listen to their advice, we're going to be okay, and we're going to make an impact in politics and law and all the above.
Yes, amen, amen. You know, one of the things that I find interesting, Donna, is that when we talk about, I was listening to Ian, how he talks, some of the older people don't understand what the profession of law is like. If you go back in early Christian history, the leading advocates for the Christian faith were mostly lawyers. Justin Martyr and others at the turn of the century. I'm talking about after Christ left, around AD 100 or so. These were lawyers who were advocating for the Christian faith, and they were doing it through the canons of rhetoric. As the father of a graduate from Oakwood University who is an attorney and who works at at NASA, she always points back to the experience she had being formed here at Oakwood as a place for service. One of the things she mentioned to me, Preston, when she started her career as a public defender, she never knew that there was such an opportunity for ministry, because you're actually trying to help families, especially when they're young people, young males particularly, are in distress or they're in the legal system, and helping them navigate what the options are. And it becomes a real ministry. You get very close to those families. How do you see public policy impacting public policy, changing public policy, so that we have fewer of our young males and others being entangled in the judicial system? How do you see that working? What do we teach that will help impact the policies that drive those kinds of outcomes?
Well, we try to focus our students on purpose, because there is a danger when you get involved in public policy and advocating for justice to get caught up in the emotion of protest. And protest has a place, but after the protest is over, what is it that we want? So we try to get our students to focus on on finding out and articulating tangibly what is it that we're after, and how do we intervene in society, and where do we intervene in society to move those things forward. Kind of an example of that is, it was, as you know, Malcolm X and Dr. King. Mm-hmm. And Malcolm X gave us our identity, he gave us our courage, but Dr. King and his negotiator, Andrew Young, actually negotiated tangible things like ending qualified immunity for police, and those types of things that will keep our young Black men and women out of the system, or when they do get involved in the system, to adjust the system for justice. There is a term that is used quite a bit called systemic racism. We try to break down what that means and where in the system we need to adjust so that the system is no longer pointed to a racist end.
Mm-hmm.
So in your opinion, Professor Foster, why do you think it's so hard for us to really push through and get results that we want to see as it relates to housing, affordable health care, the racism that you talked about? Why is it so difficult for us to push through and resolve these issues?
I think one of the problems is that we, as I was mentioning earlier, we expend our energy on our frustration. Mm-hmm. And we need to be thoughtful even before there's an event, because we know, there was Trayvon Martin, and there Brianna Taylor, and there sadly will be more. So before the next event happens, what is it that we're after? What is the agenda? We started an organization here at Oakwood called United Collegiate Black Scholars. And it's basically a think tank to come up with a set of, come up with the agenda for Black America. What is it that we want from our policymakers? Mm-hmm. Dr. Pollard has done a great job at exposing us to policymakers, allowing us to travel to Washington, D.C., to interview with them, to put our students, we've had over 14 Congressional Black Caucus interns over the past 5 years. But when we get there, what is the agenda? What is the tangible agenda that we want them to enact?
What do you think, Professor Berdin, and then of course our students, Brianna and Ian? Okay, so right now we're in the middle of a heated political campaign with just a few days left. I don't know, 25, 27 days left. Big policy conversation, healthcare, huge policy conversation. I may be wrong, but it seems to me that President Obama started with a premise that he didn't argue in the public sphere. He didn't really argue it. He assumed it and then created policy that flowed out of it. I think his policy assumption was every American deserves health care. Now, there are people who debate that, but he didn't debate that. So then he began to form policies that actually reflect the assumption that universal health care is a right and not a privilege. Okay, if that's true, right now, that assumption is under attack, is under assault. What can students from Oakwood University do to impact the back and forth of that conversation? Professor Berdin, and then of course, Bria and Ian. What can our students do? What skills are we equipping them with to weigh in on these kinds of conversations?
So thank you, Dr. Pollard. One thing that the students can do, first of all, as Professor Foster just stated, they can create an agenda, right? Because it's no I in team. Everyone needs to be a part of the growth and impact if we want to have change. So what they could be doing right now is mobilizing as students to, first of all, do their research, learn what is the Affordable Care Act, learn what laws and policies are in place. Once they do that, then they can begin the process of implementing new ideologies to the already existing laws, or saying, hey, we want a complete overhaul, and coming up with a policy change which would have occurred through the agenda. Mm-hmm. And they can serve right now as lobbyists, because what we don't really put a lot of emphasis on, we put emphasis on our politicians, and then sometimes we put emphasis on the court, but we don't put emphasis on our lobbyists and our grassroots organizers. Those are some of the key players to changes, especially things that deal with healthcare and housing and criminal laws. They are the ones who are in the faces of the politicians, the people who are meeting in committees and making these decisions, meaning Congress. They're telling them, no, we want this for our rights, we want this for our people. So students, even now in college, can also be lobbyists. They could go out into the community, they can get petitions started, and they could really mobilize. Because when we think about the life of Jesus Christ, and that's what we teach our students here about the life of Christ, he was a servant to all mankind. He is our advocate today. And so these are the principles that students will take with them, and they can go out and be advocates, not only for themselves, but for others and the future generations.
Amen. Amen. I like you. You quote the Bible. He said he's, advocate. That's a legal term in the Bible, that's applied to Jesus, that he's an advocate. So there's lots of room there for work. Brianna, Ian, what are your thoughts?
I agree with everything Dr. Berdin has said. I think one of the things that our generation as young people, specifically Oakwood students, have gone through the past few months is civil unrest, and trying to figure out how we combat that, how we gain justice for Brianna Taylor and George Floyd and others we lost. And I think the biggest thing is we don't work together. We want to get out there and protest, and that's great. We have people's attention, but what do we do with it now? Mm-hmm. So I think by joining UCBS, as Professor Foster talked about, you can help us, we can all come together and help build that agenda. And that agenda can be anything we want. There's no minimum, there's no maximum to what that agenda can be. So when we come together and we cultivate those ideas, and then we create an action plan to get out in our city of Huntsville, because it has to start here. We can't just go to DC and make it happen. It has to start locally. We have to climb that ladder and go through all the proper steps to make sure we achieve what we want. And that comes by working together, because like Dr. Berdin said, there's no I in team. So I think everyone should join UCBS. It's not just for political science, pre-law majors. It's to advance Black people and our agenda and what we want, and not just to say what we want, but actively go get what we want.
Ian?
Firstly, very well put, Brianna. One of the things I love about Oakwood is when I go to the UCBS meetings, when I'm in class, when I'm talking with my friends, I love looking around and thinking about the future. I'm looking around and I'm seeing people who are going to influence policy in the future. And I see Oakwood students who are going to go and make a name for Oakwood, and are going to make a name for not only Oakwood, but are going to show that they are Christian young men and women doing the things that they need to do. Mm-hmm. You ask, how are we going to be able to make changes that we want to see? It's by having people who look like us, who have had common struggles of people who look like us, going into those various fields and making changes to help people that look like us. Mm-hmm. One of the things I'm so thankful for Professor Berdin and Professor Foster is because, we don't have the answers as students to everything, but they have made themselves so accessible to where we can go email them anytime, call them anytime, text them, come into their office, and they can share with us the knowledge that they have, because they're very knowledgeable people and they've been there. Professor Foster worked in the White House. He knows the game. He knows politics. He knows policy. He knows everything that goes on in DC and things like that. Professor Berdin is an attorney herself. And the knowledge that they share with us and how they help us and how they guide us will surely help us to go to that next stage. and make a big difference that's going to truly benefit all of us. So I'm very confident in that.
Dr. Pollard, this has really been a deep conversation and very needed conversation. So I want to know, because it is a law week and history and political science department week, where we're dealing with helping our students get connected to the schools that they want to attend. How can the listeners, those who are listening right now, be able to be engaged during this week with the activities? That could be professors, any of the professors.
Thank you, Donna, for this question. One thing that I want to put out and make very clear, Law Week is not just for Oakwood University students. We have opened it up for everyone. So anyone who's interested in going to law school, who's interested in learning about the profession, even if you want to hear from others who currently work in the profession, if you want to come so you can network, please join us. This is a virtual event, so anybody can join. And the way you can do that is going to Zoom, and the meeting ID for Law Week is 923-4352. Again, that's 923-4352-2552. And the password is 208093. Again, 208093. Tonight, we will be starting at 5 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And on Monday, with our attorney roundtable, we will be starting at 6 p.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time.
All right. Well, Dr. Pollard, I'm going to give you the last word as we head out.
Exciting. Our support is there, and we encourage everyone to please attend. So many wonderful things are happening here at Oakwood, and any students who are listening who may be trying to figure out where is a safe haven in which I can train for this kind of public service and public policy education, Oakwood University is the place. I'm so proud of my colleagues. I'm so proud of what they do on a daily basis. And may their tribe continue to increase as they're blessing young people and actually altering the course of history through the work of their mentees. So thank you, Professor Foster. Thank you, Professor Berdin. Thank you, students, Brianna and Ian, and continue to go on. And as they say, you've entered to learn. We look forward to the day when you will depart to continue serving. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being with us for this special edition of Inside Oakwood with Dr. Leslie Pollard. We'll see you again next week on Monday for another wonderful discussion. Thank you for being with us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.